Hello and welcome to another standard video here in the preview event of Marvel Superheroes. Today we'll be cheating some expensive red and green creatures onto the battlefield thanks to World War Hulk and the Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Let's start by going over the 5-mana saga, which on Chapter 1 says the next red or green creature spell we cast this turn can be cast without paying its mana cost. So we get to cast something expensive for free, even something like Progenitus, which is technically also red or green, and then gives us a 10/10 with protection from everything. So our opponent cannot target it with removal, they also cannot block it with their creatures, so it usually gets the game over with in 2 attacks. Now do keep in mind, protection from everything also means protection from our own saga. So on Chapter 2 we won't be able to put additional +1 counters on it, and on Chapter 3 we won't be able to double its power and toughness and give it trample, but these are still very useful modes if we have some other creature on the battlefield. And then the Earth's Mightiest Heroes is a 6-mana sorcery, revealing the top 8 cards of our library, and we can put any creature from among them onto the battlefield. So that's another way of circumventing the mana costs, and another way for us to maybe put a Progenitus onto the battlefield. This card is very reminiscent of a Random Encounter, which shares a lot of cards with this archetype, and Random Encounter only looks at the top 4 cards, whereas here we get to look at the top 8, so we've got a higher hit rate here, but of course Random Encounter gives those creatures haste, so is especially powerful with the Overlords, which get to trigger when they attack. But if we cast it with Teamwork, meaning we tap a total of power 5 or more when casting it, then we get to put any number of creatures among those top 8 onto the battlefield instead, which is usually enough to win the game if a card like Terror of the Peaks is involved, because now whenever a creature enters, it deals damage equal to its power to any target, so it can target our opponent directly, and with enough other high-powered creatures entering the battlefield, we could easily deal 20 plus damage on the spot. So that's kind of our game plan, try and ramp out World War Hulk or the Mightiest Heroes, ideally with a 5-powered creature to help pay for teamwork. So then if we take a look at our curve, at 1 mana, of course we have a Llanowar Elves to speed things up. Can also maybe discard the Armadillo for 2 mana to get a basic land and gain some life, but at the same time it's still a beefy creature we can maybe put in play with the Hulk or with the Mightiest Heroes. Then for 3 mana we can summon Fenrir to search up an extra basic land while still having a 3/2 creature on the battlefield that can maybe synergize with some of our other cards. And then the Green Overlord can be impended for 1 and double green to put an extra land onto the battlefield as well, so that can also help us ramp towards our 5 and 6 mana plays, while still being a huge creature that we can maybe randomly put onto the battlefield. Then the Carnosaur can also be discarded for 2 and a red to deal 3 damage if we need some interaction, but is still a serviceable 6-mana creature that lets us discover 5, so could still even discover into World War Hulk if we get lucky. And then Formidable Speaker can give us a creature that can tutor up specific cards. So let's say we have our World War Hulk in hand, maybe we want to search up Progenitus so we can cast that for free, or maybe we want to get something like a Terror of the Peaks to try and get the game over with, so that also gives us a bit more flexibility. And then, of course, we've got the full set of Terror, which is the creature we want to hit with our Mightiest Heroes, or maybe play for free with our World War Hulk. And then we also have a 1-of Calamity, which can also pair very nicely with the Terror of the Peaks, as we can saddle Calamity with the Terror, attack, making 2 more Terrors, and that's usually enough damage to win on the spot as well. Voltborn Tyrant can gain a ton of life and draw extra cards whenever another large creature enters. And then Galta Stampede Tyrant is also perfect to cast for free with World War Hulk, as we now get to put all other creatures in our hand onto the battlefield, so that can also deal a lot of damage if a Terror of the Peaks is involved, and another way for us to put a Progenitus into play as well. And then the mana base is just red and green lands, including the new Training Compound, which requires a basic land to be enabled, but it can still make green mana the turn we play it. So sometimes if we draw multiples, we can still maybe play a Llanowar Elves on turn 1, or maybe then get a basic land with Summon Fenrir to sort it out. So that's usually not a problem. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the play. We've got Summon Fenrir, which can get a basic to then fix the compound, which currently is missing a basic land. And then World War Hulk put in Progenitus, so yeah, assuming we draw a land along the way, this could work. Found the basic, opponent on artifacts. Hopefully this resolves. then next turn it's time to Hulk. Opponent's got the Synthesizer. Still a very powerful card in Standard, and only keeps getting more artifacts to go with it. Okay, let's Hulk. And turns out we can cast a free Progenitus here. Hit you for 3. Do still get the +1 counter since it doesn't target our creature. And we can also tap it for teamwork purposes. So Summon Fenrir is going to go away. So I do want to put +1 counters on it on the way out, I guess. Doesn't really matter. So I could just attack for 11 on 2 consecutive turns to get the game over with. But more fun would be Mightiest Heroes with teamwork. And I think we got rewarded, as we just have lethal with Terror of the Peaks triggers. So yeah, turn 4 Progenitus, turn 5 teamwork, and win the game. Can put more stuff in play, why not? Alright, I guess we're good here. And there we have it. Awesome. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a somewhat sketchy hand. Double Compound does require a basic, otherwise I'm not going to be able to impend the Overlord on turn 3. Once we do get the Overlord down, I can maybe cast Terror to set up the Mightiest Heroes. But yeah, it's still pretty sketchy. Only 2 lands to start out. I think I'm mulligan, but it's definitely close. On the draw, I might have kept. Alright, this hand has way more mana. Question is what to keep. Carnosaur gives us a bit of interaction. Tyrant is more exciting to cast if we maybe draw the World War Hulk. But I guess we'll play it safe. Our deck has a lot of expensive cards in it. So then we can still try to cast the Carnosaur instead of discarding it. And then maybe we get to discover into something nice. Alright, drew the World War Hulk. So now I'm more in favor of keeping the Carnosaur in hand. Opponent Jeskai Colors with Hazoret, the Godseeker, and draw another Elves. Can play it, hope there's no sweeper. This one cannot block. Alright, opponent's got a Sheltered. Still have 5 mana next turn. And the Mightiest Heroes will be a great follow-up. Start here. Play Carnosaur. And ideally hit like the Overlord would be nice. Another World War Hulk, so I'll take it, but don't have anything else to play for free. Although with the counters next turn, I can still build up the Elves if they answer the Carnosaur. And then I still need a land to cast this. Opponent with a Super Soldier Serum and the Adaptoid. Alright, Adaptoid can also become indestructible thanks to Hazoret, and picked up all those extra keywords as well. So 2/2, Vigilance, Haste, First Strike, Indestructible, Lifelink. Still safe to block. And another Mightiest Heroes, a little awkward. Yeah, I guess we still pump up the Carnosaur. And then I don't think I'm attacking. Because yeah, this can hit back for 4, gain 4 at least. They might have more legendaries. I guess they can also make it unblockable. Alright, fair enough. I guess we'll attack. Alright, so just need a land here. Although, I guess with Chapter 3, we can also deal a lot of damage if they don't answer the Carnosaur. Opponent's got vision. So now the Adaptoid flies. But yeah, we get to double the Carnosaur's power twice. So that's more than enough here. Otherwise Armadillo gets a land, and then next turn we can set up the heroes. So yeah, it turns out that World War Hulk can also be a powerful finisher. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand seems functional. Facing artifacts with turn 1 Springleaf. We've got turn 1 Elves. Turn 2 Speaker. Maybe looking for the Overlord to help us ramp. The Assault Robot pings us when artifacts enter. And the Rust Harvester. Alright, so play Speaker. Could also discard the Carnosaur to take something out. Yeah, I guess we don't want to take out Assault Robot, otherwise Harvester can take out my Elves. So I think we just play Speaker. And then... do I keep Galta? I do not have World War Hulk in hand. So maybe Galta is not very useful right now. And then get either the Overlord or summon Fenrir. Can maybe get a little bit more value out of the Fenrir right now. Although it's possible the Overlord will eventually turn into a creature to help us teamwork. Opponent's got another Hydra. And another Springleaf. So we're taking some chip shots, but they are down to 1 card in hand at least. And we drew a land for turn, which is also very useful. So, still gonna impend this. Could also now look at Carnosaur, hope to draw land to cast this. Then we set up our Mightiest Heroes, or I can just cast a Terror next turn if I don't draw the land, which is probably good enough. Alright, Pinnacle Emissary, that one's scary with double Assault Robot, as our opponent can make a ton of 1/1 artifact tokens, assuming they have more artifacts in hand. And Ironheart, an artifact giving non-creature spells improvise, so they can now also tap to pay for more expensive spells. And yeah, I'm down to 10. They added a 3/4 flyer to the board, take another 2 down to 8. And next turn they can cast Emissary. Although never mind, they didn't warp it, they cast it to begin with. So take my turn. Found the land. So yeah, can go for the Mightiest Heroes, although it's going to be without Teamwork. Or I can play Terror of the Peaks, and then next turn cast it with Teamwork, which is likely lethal. And then we also have a Flying Blocker, which maybe keeps me alive. I think I prefer that over spinning the wheel on Carnosaur, because having the Terror in play kind of enables the Mightiest Heroes to be a win condition. If an artifact on their side dies, I guess the Harvester could still take out the Elves. So then I might be a mana short. But we'll see here. Castle Doom can also make an artifact token. Alright, we get to untap. And Galta the draw would have been great to put in with Mightiest Heroes, but yeah. Let's go for it and hope for the best with Teamwork. And that should suffice. 13 plus 6 is 19. I guess we're one short. But our opponent's going to scoop it up. We're also going to gain enough life where we're not in danger of dying. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a decent start with Elves into Summon Fenrir, and then World War Hulk. Missing something expensive to cast for free. But maybe Summon Fenrir can draw a few cards as well. So we'll give it a shot. Opponent on Heroes with Nick Fury. Very nice. So expecting a lot of creatures, hopefully not too much removal for my Elves. And then Nick Fury can eventually power up to find more heroes. So they're going for the full 5 colors, it seems. And Jennifer Walters, so will not be casting spells in the opponent's turn. Found the Mightiest Heroes, which, yeah, we can try to cast instead of World War Hulk. Could still Hulk put in Summon Fenrir, and then it's going to be maybe easier to set up teamwork. Since we also get additional counters on Chapter 2. This attack maybe implies some trick. Don't mind trading the Summon Fenrir. Yeah, let's just take the trade here. Maybe make them use something. Opponent had an Airbender Ascension. Can airbend the Elves, slow us down. So this turn we can just summon plus Elves. So then I will be 1 power short of teamwork next turn. But we can just Hulk first, perhaps. Alright, Overlord was a good pickup. So now I'm liking Hulk into Overlord. And then next turn we'll set up the Mightiest Heroes. So I'm not gonna attack in case, well, I guess if they did trade, then next turn this would go away before I get a chance to tap it with teamwork anyways. But it would be nice to maybe draw an extra card. Opponent had King T'Challa. So they will draw when I draw off my Summon Fenrir. Opponent had another Jennifer, which is why they probably traded the first copy. And another Mightiest Heroes, so yeah, can't really go wrong here. Can put the counters elsewhere to diversify a bit. Draw Voltborn. Opponent gets to draw as well. And let's see what the Mightiest Heroes have to offer. I guess I don't need to tap the Elves. Tap Overlord, or I can tap the 2 Elves and attack with Overlord. Alright, so Progenitus is legendary. So no real point in putting in 2, since there's no Hellkite to deal damage with. But I will put in a Voltborn Tyrant. Finding a backup copy. And this is a lot of power and toughness. Now do keep in mind you cannot target Progenitus with World War Hulk, since it has protection from everything, even your own sagas. She-Hulk can attack, but it's not going to amount to much. They can redirect some damage, but yeah, opponent's pretty dead here. GG's, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a promising hand. Elves into Fenrir, try to ramp out the Mightiest Heroes. ideally we find some beefy creature along the way to set up teamwork first. If we draw our Hulk enchantment, we can play a free Galta, which is pretty good too. Well, let's see what we're up against. Starting town. We get to summon. Can play another summon. And then we'll eventually maybe draw some cards as well. Opponent on artifacts with the Ravenous Robots. Overlord was a perfect draw, since that'll ramp and set up teamwork. And we'll offer the trade, I doubt they'll accept. So their best case scenario, either a counter spell or removal for Overlord. But they're just going to make a bunch of artifacts here, it seems. They could be playing a third color for interaction. But nope, opponent taps out for a dowsing device. I guess I can still transform to make a mana. And the Harrier, so they went all out here, almost emptying their hands, making a ton of tokens. We'll see if that's going to be good enough. Terror of the Peaks. It is tempting to play that first, but I have to imagine just going for the heroes is better. Alright, that's a pretty good haul. So now I get to put in Terror alongside Galta and summon Fenrir, which is 15 damage, and our opponent's at 14, so that is a game. Make sure to give it a good game after targeting our opponent. I've made the mistake before of clicking on my own profile picture. But yeah, there we go. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the draw. We've got 2 lands, Llanowar Elves. Speaker can get more ramp. And then the Mightiest Heroes. Calamity combos with Terror. So I do need a bit more mana, but I'll give it a shot. Opponent blue-red, another Elves is nice. And our opponent on artifacts, alright. Armadillo can get a land, and then I can still play the Elves. Can get a mountain, so we have double red. So we're ramping very nicely. Next turn Terror. Hopefully turn after Mightiest Heroes with teamwork. Although Calamity copying Terror a bunch could also be good enough. Now Ultron is scary, but we did find the land. So yeah, if they don't have any relevant interaction, we could get there next turn. So if I go for Calamity, we get to deal 4. I can saddle with the Terror, attack, making 2 more, which will both deal 10 damage. So that would be game. But since we're playing in the preview event, we can try the Mightiest Heroes instead. With teamwork. And that'll do it too. Galta can put in more creatures, and then we get to combo with Calamity after all. But our opponent's going to be dead before that happens. I guess I could have targeted their creatures as well. But yeah, opponent's dead here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand feels a little sketchy. Can get a land with Armadillo, play Speaker, but I'm not sure what we're getting here that sorts this out. Calamity is nice with Carnosaur, but we're pretty far from getting both in play. Alright, this one has potential. Elves into Overlord, hopefully into World War Hulk. And then put in a free Progenitus. Do need my elves to survive. Opponent with a rot collar, so squirrels. A land is a good draw. Still gonna ramp here, because next turn we could already Hulk for Progenitus. Wouldn't be able to target Progenitus with the counters or the power doubling. But yeah, still a 10-10, that's incredibly hard to deal with. And that can attack unopposed. Insidious Roots, okay. Rot Collar attacks. And time to Hulk. Cast Progenitus. On turn 3. We even have an Elves to protect Progenitus from like an Edict effect, which is maybe one of the few ways they have of answering it. Outside of board wipes that just destroy all creatures. So next turn counters on the Elves, since I cannot target Progenitus. That one extra life they gained is actually quite relevant, since now I need more than 2 Progenitus attacks to win the game. Rot Collar does have Menace, but our opponent's gonna keep it on defense. Okay, so what's next? Could play Summon Fenrir, so next turn I can cast the Carnosaur. Or Speaker could look for something. But yeah, it's not going to be on the battlefield in time to double its power. So I think we Fenrir. And I may as well send in the Elves. Opponent is jumping. So next turn, doubling the Elves, we can maybe attack for lethal. Yeah, opponent's got Squirrel Girl, so that was the combo with a Rot Collar and the Insidious Roots makes sense. Yeah, I think we target the Elves and then we should be able to just attack for lethal, since we also gain Trample. Could also use the Carnosaur to deal 3 to a blocker to trample for even more, but should not be necessary. Alright, sweet. And there we have it. So a clean 7 wins without any losses, with a red-green Hulk surprise. And yeah, the deck seems to be quite powerful. Just need to make sure you mulligan into a hand that's functional, since you will sometimes have hands that just don't do anything, since it's all expensive spells or maybe all ramp without any curve toppers. So yeah, don't be afraid to mulligan, and then hopefully the deck treats you well. It certainly did for me today. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.